Between 2005 and 2009, 8 women vanished from Jefferson Davis Parish. Their bodies were eventually discovered scattered across the dense, murky wetlands surrounding the town. One by one, over 4 years, investigators pulled their remains from the rural canals and muddy bayous. The pattern was rigid and terrifyingly consistent. Local law enforcement quickly offered an explanation to the press. A single, highly active serial predator was stalking vulnerable women in the area. Residents began locking their doors, terrified of a phantom killer operating in the shadows of their community. However, the more investigators looked at the facts, the less the serial killer theory seemed to hold up, leading to questions about what was actually happening in the shadows of the parish. Independent investigators reviewing the case files immediately noticed a glaring problem with the official story. These 8 women were not random strangers selected off a highway. They lived on the margins of Jefferson Davis Parish. All struggled with similar hardships, navigating the local drug trade and sex work to survive. Police pointed to these vulnerabilities as proof of a single predator targeting a specific demographic. But the facts told a different story. These women were intimately acquainted, running in the exact same circles. They frequented the same motels, bought narcotics from the same drug houses, and associated with the same prominent, shadowy figures. A social network this dense points to multiple suspects overlapping in the same criminal ecosystem. The idea of a lone wolf predator picking off random victims simply didn't fit the physical evidence found at the crime scenes. Investigative reporter Ethan Brown began pulling the thread on these connections, diving deep into the official murder files of Jefferson Davis Parish. What he documented pointed to a deliberate smokescreen. The serial killer narrative allowed authorities to ignore the obvious, intersecting suspects right in front of them. When Brown looked for the physical evidence collected at the crime scenes, he found that crucial items had mysteriously vanished from secure police lockups. The remaining case files were heavily redacted, blacking out critical details. Out in the community, people who knew the victims were systematically intimidated. Key witnesses were far too terrified of local authorities and corrupt officials to ever speak on the record. Evidence doesn't vanish on its own, and witnesses don't go silent without leverage. These are the active, mechanical steps of an institutional cover-up. The primary obstacle to solving these murders was not a lack of suspects, but the very people sworn to investigate them. Extensive reporting and witness accounts allege that several members of the local police force were directly participating in the illicit economies these women relied on. Because they intimately knew which officers were involved in the drug and sex trades, these 8 women transformed from marginalized citizens into major liabilities for powerful individuals. Rather than root out the corrupt officers, the local justice apparatus allegedly closed ranks, suppressing evidence to protect their colleagues from exposure. The gridlock in the Jeff Davis 8 case represents the final success of systemic corruption. The silence and missing evidence served exactly who they were intended to protect. Almost 2 decades later, the murders of the Jeff Davis 8 remain unsolved. The individuals responsible for their deaths are likely still walking free. It leaves the remaining residents trapped in an isolating reality, knowing the people wearing the badges might be the very predators they fear. Because the ultimate question remains, who do you call for help when the police are the ones hiding the truth?